Hello, and welcome to Trevor Technologies video on how to configure static Ether channel using an Ansible playbook. If you are here because you follow our YouTube channel or because you saw our Facebook and Instagram posts and want to learn more about Ansible and how to use it to configure Cisco network devices, then you are in the right place. We're going to start this video off by first going over our network topology or our network environment. So as you can see here, I'm running GNS3. And in my GNS3 environment, I have a Cisco router, two switches, and then an Ansible server over here. This Ansible server is actually just a Debian box running in my GNS3 environment. You also see this NAT cloud over here. What this NAT cloud is doing is actually performing port address translation, doing some nested virtualization to actually have our network devices here reach out to the internet. So this Ansible server has access to my GitLab repository that hosts all my Ansible files that we are going to use in today's video to configure static Ether channel on switch 1. So just to show you a little bit how this network is working, we have our router 1 here. And let's go through and just look at our interface facing the NAT cloud. So we have IP address DHCP, IPNAT outside. And then if we look at our interface facing our LAN network, you can see we just have an IP address here and then IPNAT inside. And then if we look at our NAT statements, you can see I'm doing PAT actually because it's keyword overload. This is the interface where we're going to be doing our translations. And then our source list is access list 10. So if we do show access list, you'll see access list 10 is permitting my LAN, right? My 192.168.1.0 network, which would be these guys. And then I'm also running a DHCP server. So IP DHCP. That's going to hand out an IP address to my Linux box, my Debian box over here. And then if we take a look at our Linux box here, you can see that this is just a Debian or Linux network automation tool that we can install into GNS3. So come here, look, you can see the Linux folder structure, file structure, and yes, we are running Ubuntu, or at least a Debian-based Linux machine. And then our switches are very basic. What we have here is just VLAN 1 with our IP address. And then it's going to be gig 2/0 through 2/3. That is going to be our port channel over to switch 2. So before we get into the actual Ansible, right, and I show you guys the Ansible folder structure and how we run the playbook and how I pull that Ansible repository down into my Ansible server here, let's first do some defaulting out on these interfaces. So first thing I'm going to do is bring all of my ports that I'm going to be bundling into my Ether channel back to default. So if we look at it now, type in do show IP interface brief. Let's go ahead and get rid of our port channel as well. No interface port channel 10. Let's take a look at one of our interfaces here. You can see it's back to default. The one thing I'm going to do here is just go in. I'm going to shut these down. And then I'm going to no shut them. And before we get into the Ansible, I'm going to make sure that we can ping everywhere from this switch. So I'm going to make sure we can ping our default gateway. Make sure we can ping our neighbor switch. It looks like we can't, probably because we're doing some convergence here first. And let's make sure we can ping our automation box, which is this network automation Linux VM tool, whatever you want to call it in our GNS3 topology. As long as our network automation tool over here can reach this switch, then we will be able to run our Ansible playbook. So now let's take a look at the actual code, right? So here I have VS Code running. I'm using on my personal computer Ubuntu 20.04, and I have VS Code installed. So as you can see here, I have a very simple Ansible folder structure. So some key things, right? My Ansible.cfg file that tells it what Python version to use, where the actual inventory is, so you can see current directory, then this folder, and then this file. That's where our host file is. And then our host file is going to have the IP addresses of our network devices. And then we have our host vars folder here, which is going to have all the connection variables that we're going to use when we actually do an SSH connection from our Ansible server to connect to our network devices. This is pretty much telling it its password, its username, what kind of device we're using. So iOS, right? And we're on a networking device. Then we have our group vars here. This is like the catch-all, right? So these host vars are specific to a singular network device. This all.yaml file here is for any other network device that is not specified here. And with that being said, now let's go take a look at our GitLab repository. So as you can see here, I have pushed from VS Code. You can see down here all my Git pushes from my local repository up to GitLab. So we have a source control management now up in the cloud, right? Or online. So what we do for our DNS3 topology to be able to get that Ansible repository is we're going to go to our automation device here. And first thing I'm going to do is go to cd home. That's fine right there. Actually, let's go to our root folder here. And I'm going to remove this repository so I can do a clean start for you guys. So what we're going to do here is type in git clone. And we're going to clone via HTTPS this repository so that we can start configuring network devices using Ansible in our DNS3 topology. Now we take a look. There is our repository. And now we're going to change directory into there. Take a look. We have our host vars folder, our directory, our group vars inventory, and of course our ansible.cfg. And then we have our actual playbook here. So let's go ahead and take a look at this actual playbook. As you can see, we have a YAML file here, and that's going to be what Ansible playbooks use. We have our host, we have the task, and then we have our module here, and then our parent, which pretty much is, again, just using Cisco CLI saying, when we connect to this host, we're going to go interface range gig 2/0 through 3, and then we're going to execute these lines of code against that. So now let's see this actually run. So what I'm going to do here is type in Ansible playbook. If you're doing this in production, you're most likely going to have to run this from sudo, right? From root privileges. But what we're going to do here is type in Ansible playbook, and then our playbook here, static_etherchannel.yaml. That's going to run this task. And as you can see, we have green and orange, right? No scary red letters. If we come here, we see this little caution symbol came up, and that's because there was a change made. Previously, we had no port channel, and now if we take a look, we have port channel 10 here. So just with a single line of code right here from our CLI Ansible playbook, now we can configure static ether channel. And if we wanted to scale this out, we could do this across many different hosts all in one playbook. So that is the beauty of using Ansible in our network infrastructure, right? Changing it to infrastructure as a code to create consistent baselines among all of our network devices. All right, guys, that's about it for this video. I want to thank you for viewing and come back next time where we show you more Ansible or Python automation in our networks. Thank you.